Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am Game Master Bloodworth, and as you can see by the graphics, today's video is going to be another deeper dive into Daggerheart. Today I'll be looking at Chapter 2, Playing an Adventure. So it is primarily a video that will focus on the actual gameplay and just getting everyone in the proper mindset for Daggerheart. And I'm going to have a little bit to talk about as I go through each of these sections of it. It's a very important section, a very important chapter, so that you can get the proper tone for the game and understand the mechanics and all. So I am going to break this down over several different episodes for certain, and I'm going to begin with the flow of the game and go through that. So before I do that, I just want to show that while I'm be doing these videos, I'm going to have the book open off to beneath me here, so I can see both on the screen and also down here, because every once in a while I catch something that that I'm not seeing directly on the screen. So I also find that it is such a gorgeous book that it's nice to have it turned to the sections that I will be talking about. So I am going to push over to that section, and then we will begin with the coverage there. So I am at Chapter 2, the flow of the game. So this is what I will be going over with you at the same time. So let me just get organized here. Sorry about that. So let's go right here. So Chapter 2, Playing an Adventure. In this chapter, we'll cover what you need to know as a player to start an adventure, including the core mechanics, combat leveling up, equipment, and a few optional rules you can add to your game. So obviously I'm going to break this down into several different segments so that it's, number one, shorter, and number two, it will cover everything in much more detail than if I just try to cram through everything in one 40-minute video. So the flow of the game. In a session of Daggerheart, you and the other players go around the table describing what your characters do in the fictional circumstances that the GM set up, building on each other's ideas and working together to tell an exciting story. I have a little problem with this where it says working together to tell an exciting story. I don't know if it's just a way that they're describing it that means something different. When I first hear it, I would rather have said, they're responding to each other's players, player characters' actions, or the characters' actions, rather than this sounds more like they're working together to contrive, an exciting story. So that's just the one thing I don't really like about the way it's worded here. The mechanics of the game help facilitate this conversation, providing structures to the discussion and a way to resolve moments when there are several exciting possibilities for what happens next. Again, it sounds like it's just being plotted forward too much. Everyone at the table should ask questions and integrate the answers into the game. As a player, you will often ask clarifying questions about the scene. Are there any guards outside the door? Or what kind of weapon are they holding? Or can I jump across the gap safely? The GM might answer these questions directly. There are 4 guards outside the door. Or they are wielding long swords. They might also ask you to roll to determine the answer. All right, it's raining and dark. So let's see how well you jump the gap. Give me an agility roll, difficulty 11. All right, I have a lot of problems with these questions. All right, first of all, the GM is going to describe the scene, and the GM is going to describe the scene in ways that the player characters can see what is in the room. Let's say they're walking into a room, they can see what's in the room, they can smell any smells that are, that are noticeable. They can hear any sounds being made. They can possibly feel like room temperature or things like that as well, feel a tremor in the floor or something along those lines. So pretty much sticking to their genuine or general, I should say, like physical senses. What can I see, hear, smell, feel, touch, and so on. All right. If you want to create like a sense, like a sixth sense or something, you can do that atmospherically as well. But that's done in the narrative of the description, right? But the asking clarifying questions like that is something that would indicate to me that the GM missed an opportunity to fully describe the room. That second question, are there any guards outside the door? How could they possibly know that? Do I hear sounds of people outside the door? That's something that, yes, you could ask. All right, but I would only do that after telling the game master, I am listening in at the door. All right, and then wait for the game master to respond. You hear motion on the other side of the door. Never like the number of guards outside the door. That just doesn't make any sense. Or even whether or not they are guards. All right, they're wielding long swords as an answer. Does every player character know what a longsword is? All right, you could say some kind of a bladed weapon or something along those lines, but put those things into the player character's knowledge basis, not the player's knowledge. All right, so I would be kind of elusive with it until they have encountered enough of these things to actually know, just by looking at it, what it is. And then telling them, the last question is, can I clear this gap safely? All right. The answer is no. It's like, because if you roll low, then it's not going to be a safe clearing of the gap. All right. Or do I think I can describe what the gap looks like and let the player character make that decision? Make the player, through his or her player character, make that decision if they're going to attempt it. Never make it, an obvious, no, you cannot jump that. Describe it. Let them decide whether or not they can jump it. If you say it's a 15-foot gap, all right, player character with a good agility and a good a good strength or whatnot, or however they have their bonuses placed within their traits, then they can decide that on their own. If you say it's 150-foot gap, then unless the player is a complete fool, they're going to know that they can't jump that. But if they want to jump it, you let them. All right. And it's an impossible jump, right? So you wouldn't even have them roll. I would just say you fell, a distance, whatever that distance was, and then you roll for damage. So there's times when, you don't answer questions. You just you describe the scene and then let them go with their action. In turn, the GM asks you questions and builds on those answers to create the fiction. How are you able to sneak around the building so carefully? Why would a GM ask that question? All right, I mean, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Um, they should have described that they were attempting to sneak around the building carefully. All right, now they'll know whether they were successful or not based on if anyone discovers them sneaking around. All right, they're not going to know how they were able to do it. They're just going to know that they attempted it, and so far it doesn't seem like anyone had heard them moving around it. You know, I don't let my players roll their hide in shadows or their sneak or anything like that. I roll that for them. And then the only way they know that they were successful is they if they either were, not found out, not discovered, or if they were. What does that camp you've set up look like? I mean, that's a legitimate question. You could say, well, how are you organizing your camp? That way I know if there is an encounter, how the encounter might respond to the way that their camp is set up. You found a way to safely scramble up the wall. What made your climb easier than you anticipated? Again, that is a question that doesn't need to be asked, number one, because it's already after the fact. The players should be describing what their characters are using to scramble up the wall. This past Saturday, I ran a game session, and the players had to climb a cliff face. They told me, I'm going to use iron spikes, and I have 60 feet of rope, and I'm going to use a grappling hook. All right, so I'm going to use that while I'm attempting to climb. And I said, great. And then I adjusted the difficulty challenge, for them. And then I let them roll. All right, so they climbed up. They said, I'm going to hammer, the spikes in every several distances. It really didn't matter at that point. And they climbed up. They were successful in getting to the midpoint, which is what I described to them. All right, and then every other subsequent player, would say, well, I'm going to utilize that rope to assist myself in climbing up as well, and so on and so forth. All right, I don't have them climb up and say, well, what did you do that made that climb easier for you? It's after the fact. All right, make them say it ahead of time. All right, this back and forth creates a collaborative conversation where everyone can meaningfully contribute to the fiction. I don't see how. Make them declare their actions before they actually do them. You as the game master are just setting the difficulty challenges, and then you're going to describe the outcomes based on their die rolls, and then let them respond to those outcomes with their next actions, whatever they might be. It is not, contributing to a fiction. The fiction is happening. The scene is unfolding based on the responses to the dice roll and the actions that they stated that they were going to do. You're just describing it. You're not having a conversation, about it. For those familiar with role-playing games, the flow of the game might come naturally, but if you're new to the experience, it might not. The following steps outline the examples of gameplay loop that drives every session. The gameplay loop will be described in more detail as in the upcoming sections. All right, so, getting back into this paragraph here. It might come naturally. If you're new to this experience, it might not. Um, that's what the bonus of experience is, right? And experience is gained. When I first started playing D&D as a 11 or 12-year old in 1977 or 78, um, I learned through trial and error in the beginning. We went through a lot of characters in the very beginning. All right, we and over time, our characters started lasting a lot longer because we were learning, we were experiencing things. So it's I think it's best to let new players experience the game in with its risks, and not trying to build a story around their success, rather, and contrived success, but rather just let it happen as it happens. So much more organically. So let's take a look at these. So the GM narrates details. Step 2, the players and the GMs ask questions. I've already pointed out some issues I have with that. Step 3, the players and GMs answer questions. Again, I've kind of covered that. Choose and resolve actions and repeat the cycle. So let's see how they break down each of these. So the GM narrates details. The GM lays out the scene, describes the surroundings, dangers, NPCs, and any important elements that the characters would notice immediately. All right, so I'm fine with that. That's what they should see. The players and GM ask questions. I've kind of covered this already. The players ask questions to explore the scene in more depth, gathering information. Rather than asking questions, I would rather have the players, again, let their characters do things, and then see what the GM describes as a result of what they're doing, rather than asking questions back and forth of each other. The players and the GMs answer questions. Again, you're not answering questions, you're describing what the outcomes were. All right. Choose and resolve actions. The GM describes the scene and provides information. They lead the players to opportunities to take actions, problems to solve, obstacles to overcome, mysteries to investigate. Let me just pause this for a second. I'm sorry about that. A little spam call. So getting back, resolving, as the GM describes the scene and provides information, they lead the players to opportunities to take action, problems to solve, and whatnot. Okay, repeat the cycle, and then we go to an example of an interaction. So let's take a look at the example of this interaction before we get into the next thing. So I'm going to wrap it up here. A noble has caught Nolan's character, Lavelle, trying to steal an important letter from the bag in the busy market square at the center of town. How many guards did you say this noble had? Nolan asked Stella, the GM. The GM didn't mention that. So, the answer is none. Don't, it's not how many guards did you say this noble had. How many guards did I see around this noble? True, right with him, and you suspect that there's another 2 out of uniform back in the crowd. Again, I mean, that's not something that they would, you're telling the player character what they suspect. All right, you're getting into the player character's head. You're telling the player character what he or she thinks, believes, or what suspects, whatever. It's not role playing. All right, that just not. So, all right, great. I'm by an alley, right? Why would you ask that? Tell the GM I'm in the alley. All right, tell the GM where you're at. Don't ask the GM where you're at. The GM shouldn't be telling you where you're at. You're telling the GM where you're at. I want to back off and find a place to climb up the rooftop before anyone can catch me. This is just all just so wrong, in my opinion, just so wrong. It is giving conclusions to things that you haven't had your character do yet. All right. Sure thing, Stella says. Based on the situation, she decides that Nolan doesn't need to roll for Lavelle to accomplish what they want to do. You're fast, and thankfully the noble is the one who spotted you, not the guards, so you can scramble up without a roll. The guards will be following you, though, and once you're on the roof, they're going to draw their crossbows and start shooting. How does the character know that? This is all metagaming. This is all the GM talking as the game master and the players talking as the players, and none of it is immersive at all. All right. How close are the buildings? Could I leap onto the next building roof? All right. First of all, that first climbing should have been a roll. Because if there's any possibility of not being able to do something, there's a roll involved with it. That is not just hand waved, you climbed up this massive wall. All right. Now the person's asking, can I, how close are the buildings? All right, that's fine. All right. Could I leap onto the next building roof? Just tell me I'm going to attempt to leap on the next building. Not could I, just do it. All right. Or attempt to do it. You're not asking, can you? They should answer, I don't know, roll. Again, there's no role playing going on here. This is just a back and forth question and answer between the player and the game master, and the characters are not involved at all. All right, there's no characterization going on here. They're not that far apart, Stella says. Certainly not any wider than what you've used to from growing up downside. That'd be an agility roll to escape across the roofs, but heads up, if you don't succeed here, you'll probably take some serious damage from the fall. It's a long way down. Lavelle has a +2 agility, and Nolan spends a hope to use Lavelle's scoundrel experience, adding a +2 bonus to the roll to make the leap. I know it's dangerous, but I've done this kind of jump before. Nolan gathers 4 character tokens to represent his agility and the scoundrel bonus, then rolls his duality dice. The hope die lands on a 9 and the fear die on a 4. He combined up the values together, adding up to 13. Then he adds the 4, so a 17. Because his hope die rolled higher than his fear die, Nolan tells the GM, I rolled a 17 with hope. All right, don't have to tell the GM that. The GM is looking at it. The GM sees it. All right. I don't like making mention of the die rolls. Everyone's rolling in plain view. Just go with that. Stella nods. Nolan's total is 17, higher than the difficulty of 15 she had in mind, and a success with hope means there's no negative consequences for the action. That's more than enough to escape these guards. They're armored and trying to take shots, but none of them get close to you, and they're not good enough at jumping to risk a fall. Again, how does the player know that? All right. By the time, player character know that. By the time you're 2 blocks away, you've completely lost them, which you wouldn't know, and make sure to gain a hope for that roll. But now you are farther away from the noble and the letter you were trying to steal from him. what do you do? All right. So many problems with this, with this here, that this example of an interaction is just not what you should be doing. And again, in my opinion, it's not how you should be running your game. So I'm going to leave it here, and I'm just going to say that the flow of the game section of this is something that you can completely ignore based on what they wrote here, and just do what makes sense for you and your table. I didn't see anything here I would really, adopt at my own table. There's nothing here that that tells me that you're creating a separation between player knowledge and player character knowledge. There's too much conversation going back and forth in the meta, between player and game master, and not enough putting it into the context of what the character is doing, seeing, hearing, noticing, feeling, whatever. And yeah, and it's just too structured to tell a story rather than to allow a story to develop, allow a story to happen organically. So so yeah, I mean, getting off to the start of this, I don't like the tone that it's setting for the game, and and I think that it perpetuates some pretty bad practices of role playing amongst players, especially new players. That reading of the example interaction was, and that was my first time reading it, and I just saw problems all over it. Not a great lead off into gameplay, in my opinion. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing your comments, both pro and con, based on what I'm saying. So yeah, you could be negative, you could be positive, whatever, but I pretty much stand on the fact that what I read there was not anything I would even remotely want to get my players, especially new players, attuned with, and that's the way that they're going to role play. That's tedious in my opinion, and just very, very low level of low level immersion into what you're looking to do. So anyway, again, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you didn't, please feel free to point out where you disagree with me. I'm happy to read that as well. And remember to like and subscribe, and to share this video out there. And I look forward to seeing you on a gaming screen or at a convention sometime soon. Next weekend, I will be at the Central New York Role-Playing Game Convention. First time that is being run. Really excited about it. I will be running Shadow Dark and Fallout, and I'm playing, hopefully be playing in a morning session of a war game run by Joseph Block, of Greyhawk Grognard and Adventures Dark and Deep, although this skirmish game is a different game. But it's set in the world of Greyhawk. It's a famous world of Greyhawk battle during the Greyhawk Wars. So I'm excited. I'm hoping I'll be able to get through that in the morning before I have to then return home. It is Father's Day, so that might get into a bit of an issue. So anyway, as always, thanks for joining in. Enjoy the rest of your week, and you all just keep on playing different games out there. And even if you come across something like this where I didn't like this particular part of the game system, let's see where the mechanics will take me in the next video. So take care. Thanks for joining.